Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. I hope everybody had a good Mother's Day. It was certainly a good time at the Mexican restaurant we went to out in Palm Springs, and we had a lovely time. And I hope all you guys had just the same. Now, we are going to do something very special today. We're going to have Molly and Eric talk to us about how they processed their images a long time ago, for the images from the eclipse, a long time ago, we all decided, yeah, we're all going to go out to various places around the United States and we're going to get pictures of the eclipse, and then we'll put them all together and we'll process them, and we'll show you how we process it and everything. Well, the clouds had a different idea, and we weren't quite as successful gathering raw data for you as we thought, but we did manage to get enough to have a really good show for tonight. So stay tuned and we'll show you what it was about. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about what's coming up in the next few weeks. Tonight, as I said, Molly and Eric and the rest of us will be telling a little bit about our eclipse adventures. Then we're going to have next week, we're going to have three shorts. Shorts are those 15, 20-minute shows where we try to tell you about little things that you can download when you're just beginning or when you're trying a specific problem or something else like that. And we've got three of them coming up next week. And one of them will be Molly. And Molly's going to tell us about, what was it you were going to tell us about, Molly? I forgot to write it down.
Odds and ends on processing.
Yeah, she's got a few processing tips and techniques and things like that she's going to put together. Patrick is going to tell us how to set up CUDA so that we can all process faster. And Alex is going to talk about PhD guiding, very basic level introduction to PhD guiding, 15, 18 minutes of why you need to guide and what you need to do the guiding and all that kind of stuff. On May 26th, Robert Reeves returns, and he's going to take us and show us a few things that he's been doing lately. And on January 2nd, Tim's going to talk about noise and astro imaging. Tim's topic comes from some research we did. We went through all of the posts all the recent posts on cloudy nights, and we asked what questions get asked most. And we came up with a 3-page list of threads that keep getting asked again and again and again. My hope was that someday we would all have this set of YouTube shows on the TAIC, and when somebody asks one of those questions again on cloudy nights, we can say, here's some place you can go and look at them. So, and we've actually done a few of them already. We've done a dozen of them so far. There are, I don't know, 50, 60 of them. So Tim's going to do a whole hour show, not a short show on it. He's going to do a whole hour show on that. And Tim is going to lead us tonight because Tim has the most interesting story about eclipses. The rest of us, we just got pretty much bummed out by it, but Tim was saved. Tim, could you tell us your story?
Sure. So let's see if we can change the presentation here. Well, you might just have to listen to me and not see my ugly mug. But I decided many months ago that I was going to take my RV and go down to Texas. And my buddy lives just south of Dallas, in a little tiny town called Van, Texas, that nobody's ever heard of. So my wife and I drove our RV down there, and we parked on his property, and we're getting all set up, and Jim is there. My buddy Jim is there with his wife and his daughter, and his wife's sister and her husband came down, and another friend. And so we had a small group of us there and all set up and getting ready to watch the eclipse. And everybody knows what happened in Texas on Eclipse Day, right? And so all day long, it was clouding up, and then it was clearing, and it was clouding up, and it was clearing. And I was, wrestling through getting images when I could and thinking, oh, well, I'm going to be able to make something out of this. We'll be okay. Saying to my wife, Tony, we'll be okay, Tone. I got it. And just before totality, about, I don't know, a minute or a couple of minutes, 5 minutes before totality, this big monster black dark cloud comes moving in and goes right over the sun. And I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm not going to get my image. And I start texting Eric and Molly and, all my friends and saying, hey, you guys get some good data for me because I'm not going to get it. And my buddy's my buddy's sister-in-law stands up, and she's quite the religious person. I am not. And she said, something to the effect of, "Dear Lord, please clear the skies up so that Tim can get his image." And I said, that's really nice of you, but if there is a God, I can't imagine him changing the workings of the universe just so that I can get a photo. Not 2 seconds before totality happens, don't the skies just clear up, and I end up getting an image that looked like this. And so afterwards we were all laughing, and she said that I was never allowed to doubt the power of prayer again. So I ended up getting totality here, and you can see the clouds came back in as the diamond ring was exiting. So this is the diamond ring on the waxing side. And you can see how all the clouds came back, but I thought that made for an interesting image. I did get some chromosphere there. I'm sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Tim, could you share your screen? There you go.
Is it not sharing?
Oh, no, it is. I forgot the time delay. I'm reading the comments and
yeah. Okay. And so there I got a little chromosphere, and I kind of zoomed in on the prominences and Bailey's beads there. So I guess I'm not allowed to doubt the power of prayer anymore. And and the good Lord was able to make sure that I ended up getting an image. So there you go. There's my silly eclipse story.
Okay, and we thought it was very inspirational, and we were glad. After about 12 minutes of total eclipse, Tim leans over to this lady and says, hey, pray some, make it come back.
And
Tim,
Alex,
there's a question here.
There's a backstory on that too.
Oh, well, just let me get a question in for Tim while he's here. By the way, Tim can't adjust a whole lot right now. He's also running the program as the director, so he may have a little problem with the noise. Now, okay, the Astro Imaging channel, is that yours? Did you put that in? Who put that one in? The Instagram?
I'm sorry? Say that again?
The question was, would you put up the name of your site? And I think Molly put it in.
Yeah, and I already did it.
Sure.
Eric did it. Okay. There, that's what you wanted to say, huh, Eric?
So the part of the backstory is we started planning for the eclipse exactly 1 year from the date, because that's when the hotels opened up. And a friend of mine booked some hotels in 2 places, including Salina, Ohio. And Tim was going to come. He was initially going to come with us, but he said, no, I'm going to go to Texas because Texas has like a 70% chance of clear weather, and Ohio has like a 20% chance. Exactly. So we ended up going to Salina, Ohio, and we had pretty good skies. And Tim went to Texas, and I think you were lucky because most of Texas was kind of clouded out.
Yeah.
And Molly and I were corresponding. She said, well, I'm going to come down to Saline too. So we had quite a group. We had our whole group from Chicago, and then Molly and your friend Dan came with it. So we had pretty good conditions, probably B+, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, we had some thin to high altitude clouds, but they didn't really impede observation much at all, and just kind of made the longest exposures not very good, but everything else worked out quite nicely.
So Molly got her money shot. I got the money shot. I got a 12-minute video of everyone excitedly running around during the eclipse, and we had a great time. And we didn't have to go to Texas for it.
Yeah. Dan and I were going to go ahead.
The two of you, Molly and Eric, are going to be showing us how they went about processing. And I think we were going to start with Molly, right?
Yeah.
We ready?
And Dana and I were going to go. We made our call probably about 48 hours in advance that we weren't going to go to Texas and we're going to go to Ohio. So we drove straight through from Denver to Toledo, where his mom lives, and then we drove south to Salina on Eclipse Day. Absolutely wild trip.
Yeah, we had a great group, by the way, and we had what 50 people anyway.
Yeah, it was nice. It wasn't like I wasn't like a huge crowd, but we weren't like by ourselves, so it was very nice.
And telescopes all over the place.
Yep, telescope, a good mix of telescope people and non-telescope people, which I
Yeah.
think is always fun for an eclipse.
Anyway, Molly, let me.
Yeah. Okay. So I got to do the 2017 and 2019 eclipses as well. 2019 one in Chile. And for those two, I had used this ancient Photoshop method from like the 90s called the pellet method, which was what, like, when people were scanning in images into Photoshop and then processing them from there back at that time. And it worked really well and it's just a bunch of math operations, and it worked really well for my 2017 and 2019 images, but was just not doing much for my images this year. And it also didn't help that most of my exposures longer than a quarter of a second were oversaturated in such a way where I was getting really sharp lines at the edge of the oversaturation, which is probably due to the clouds. And like, yeah, I'm going to get an oversaturated corona with the longer exposures, but the lines were so sharp that this method was not working for it. You could just kind of see where the lines were at in the completed image. Then a friend of mine on Facebook mentioned that he used this process in PixInsight called Larson. I don't know if it's Sekanina or Sekinina, something like that. But this process called Larson Sekinina that you've probably seen the list and have no idea what it does. And I had no idea either. And I tried that out and got a really nice result. So I'm going to take you through how I did that. And you can try and see if this will work on your data as well for those of you who managed to get eclipse images this year with all the clouds. So a little bit about my setup. I used my ZWO 2600 MC Pro, so my one-shot color Astro camera on my Takahashi 106N. So a 430 millimeter focal length, 106 millimeter aperture, f5 scope, and that's the setup that I had. That's that I took these images with, and I ran a sequence that went from, what did it go from, like 1/8,000th of a second up to 8 seconds, and just kind of looped through these different exposures. And the only ones that didn't have these weird super sharp lines of saturation were only up to 1/4 of a second long. So the first thing I did, because that only gave me 4 images to work with. So the first thing I did was take the longest exposure image and pull it up here. Well, okay, first I ran SCNR so that I can get rid of this green tinge from the fact that I used a one-shot color camera that has twice as many green pixels as red and blue. All right, so there's our SCNR to degreen.
Hey, Mal, can you share your screen?
Yeah. Oh, don't mind me. I don't have a whole lot of brain cells left, so.
There we go.
Right.
Thank you.
Let me say that again. All right, so here's our green image, and I ran SCNR in PixInsight here to degreenify it. I just ran it at 100% because there's not much green in the real signal that I care about. The corona's white, the prominences are red. Okay, so in order to get the high dynamic range image I was going for, I actually need some of the outer corona. So ordinarily I would take those longer exposures, but since I wasn't able to do that, instead what I did was I stretched this image about 6 times and saved it each time. So let me pull up the preview window here. So I usually work on my ultra wide monitor, so it's a little bit cramped here. I start by, let's maybe go to here, apply that, and then I saved that image, and then I ran it again, and saved that image, and then ran it again, and saved that image, and did this for about 6 times until I was able to get some more of the outer corona here. And yeah, the middle is saturated, and yeah, so you can see the high clouds now, but we have the detail in the outer corona. That's the part that I need. So I was kind of able to fake, uh-oh, I can't close the window because this window is too small. One second. No, that's not fair. PixInsight. Okay, well, that's awkward. I can't close the window. So we're just gonna, I don't know. Oh, that is a bummer. Shoot, okay. Anyways, so I have my kind of fake long exposure images here. And instead of kind of processing them each separately, I actually used the fast foray transform process or script to stack the images. Because it aligns them and stacks them in one step. And you could probably experiment with stacking them using the regular stacking tools, but this worked nicely. So that's what I ended up using. So if we go to FFT registration, which is a script, and you're going to select your reference frame. So I select the first one of my group of frames here. And then add all of them in. And it's actually on the default setting to integrate these images. You can also, I use this sometimes for registering other kinds of images that don't have stars in them, like planetary images and solar images. Because this does not rely on stars like the star alignment process does. It uses the Fourier transform to look for differences in the image to measure what the shift is. So this will work without the stars in it. So I'm not going to run this right now because I've already run it previously. But you would run that and you get out of it this result. Once it opens here. I unblock it from my preview window I can't close. And so effectively we have a stacked image here, which is an HDR image. So it's a 32-bit image, so there's more here than we can see on the screen. Then the next bit is where the Larsen-Seckenina process comes into play. So the Larsen-Seckenina is a rotational filter that there's actually some similar processes in Cyril and in Photoshop to do this kind of rotational filtering. And there's some math behind it that I went and read about and then decided I didn't want to read any more about it or describe it to you guys. So I didn't. It's Sunday. I don't feel like doing math on Sundays. In any case, there are several kind of cryptic settings to adjust here, but there's not a ton of settings. So this is one where you could definitely go play around with the settings. But if you want a place to start, the most important thing is this X and Y center. You need to have as close to the center of your actual sun object as possible, or else it's not going to line up properly. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if I set this to like very wrong values somewhere up here in the corner of the image, and I go run this, which will take a second, then I get this really kind of messed up, weirdly shifted image. So it's important to go estimate where the center of the sun is, and I literally just put my cursor over it, and when PixInsight is, there we go.
Molly,
Yeah.
Molly, CN, I think it is. I suggest you use the scroll over on the far right to move the page up.
You see, I don't use this monitor very often, so
Yeah,
I never had to scroll up.
and move the scroll bar up, and that'll bring that other picture down to where you can shut it out.
Thanks. Yeah, I didn't even realize that it was scrolled down. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so to estimate the center of the image, when you hover your mouse over the image and you look on the very bottom bar of PixInsight, it will tell you the coordinates down in this box here. And I estimated, I ended up going with 3315 and 2680 was the center of my sun. So if I go ahead and run it now, then you can see that we got a lot of nice detail that came out of our streamers. And that's what this kind of rotational filter does, is to bring out features in like radial features. So this is actually used quite often for doing comet processing, especially for people who do comet research and look for shapes in the comet tail that are separate from the coma of the comet. So we can utilize this here. Now, we do get this ring along the sun here. And I've messed with the D-ringing, even making the D-ringing pretty high didn't do a ton for that. And I'm still getting some weirdness on the prominences here. So what I decided to try next in order to alleviate that was, okay, let me use a color mask to grab just the prominences. But they're not very red in this image. So what I ended up doing was grabbing, let's see, got my folder open on the window here, grabbing my shortest exposure, which has nice red prominences that are easy to spot down here, and running the color mask script, which I use all the time now. It's great. Zooming in on that prominence, grabbing that red there, adjusting the end hue a bit. I set the mask blur layers to remove to 4, so this makes it like a fuzzier mask and not just very sharp. I hit OK. And I've got my mask here, but it's kind of dim. I'd like it to be a little bit stronger, so I open up my histogram transformation and strengthen that mask. The wider it is, the stronger the mask is going to be applied. Did I apply that? Yes, I did. Okay. Okay, I can close the image I made the mask from, apply the mask. And then you can, if you click on the mask to view, the view mask button here, you can double check that you got the things that you wanted. Hit it again to turn that off. And then I tried running this again. Wait for that to go. Yeah. So this time I still kind of mangling the prominences for some reason, but I don't have that white ring around the edge of the sun anymore for whatever reason. So definitely still some things I'd like to mess with more here. You know what? I just realized why that happened. Because I forgot to invert the mask. Y'all, I'm having a day. Let's try this again. That sounds great. But so there's still some things I want to that I want to kind of mess with here. I ended up taking this into Photoshop and mixing it with the shorter exposure image of the prominences to get my final image, which I should have put a copy in my folder for. Do I have one handy? Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so this was my final image, where you can still see the prominences, so they're not super well mixed. But I really like the corona that I got out of this after messing around with this Larson second in a process. So that's another thing for you to try, and mix with some of your own processes to try and make a better image than the one that I've got here so far. And I'll probably continue to mess with this. But yeah, so that's what I've got for making a nice HDR composition of your corona when other HDR composition methods aren't working very well. That's what I got. Eric?
Wait a minute. There might be, I've got a question for you,
Yeah.
Molly, before we go to Eric.
Yeah.
Do I take it you did that with one exposure, basically? Or what? Go ahead.
So I had 4 short exposures, and then I took the longest of those 4 and stretched it 6 times. So I had a total of 10. So 4 were real exposures, and 6 were stretched exposures that kind of mimicked longer exposures, basically.
Is that the ideal way to do it, or would you have rather had 10 good exposures? Were you limited by the clouds or anything, or what
I
happened?
would rather have had 10 good exposures. Let me show you what I mean with what I ended up having. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So my real longer exposures had this really sharp edge here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you see that green one there?
Mm-hmm.
And when I tried to use the pellet method in Photoshop, I was getting some really weird steep drop-offs Like you could see those rings here in,
I see.
yeah. And so that's why I wasn't able to use kind of the norm. I wasn't able to use those real longer exposures. But by stretching one of the shorter exposures, I was able to at least see the outer corona. And so like ordinarily when you're doing deep sky imaging, one might think like, can I just make copies of the image and stack those? And in deep sky imaging, you're trying to reduce noise. So that doesn't work for deep sky because you're not going to get the noise reduction benefit of when you stack the same image because has the same noise.
You're just repeating the same pixel problem.
Right, but that's not the problem we're trying to fix here. Here I'm not trying to reduce noise and increase signal. Here I'm trying to see the dimmer signal that's further out. So taking the same image and stretching it a bunch of times isn't quite as cheaty as it's going after a different benefit than what you would try to do with noise.
Okay.
And yeah, so
Okay.
I'd much rather have the real data, but alas.
Thank you. And I see no new questions. Terry says that's a very nice job you did there, Terry Martin.
Thank you.
And I think it's time to move on to Eric then. So Eric.
Yeah, you can stop sharing, Molly. Hi. What I'm going to demonstrate couldn't be more different than what Molly did. Not better, not worse, just different. I'm more of a Photoshop person. So I'm going to demonstrate one of the process that I use, but not the final process. I think the final process, to be fair, involved a lot of little tweaking and adjusting. But I'm going to demonstrate something that with a couple decent exposures, you can really do in maybe 5 or 10 minutes. I like things like that. So let us click present now. Okay, pre-board, there we go. Entire screen. Share. Okay, are we sharing? We're sharing. Let me bring up Photoshop.
It's coming. Hold on.
Oh,
It's coming.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, this could be a little wonky on my little laptop, but let's see what we can do. So the first thing I could do is I have 6 exposures from just barely seeing that corona to, really quite bright. And the question is, how do we put these all together and get some detail out of it? So the first thing I'm going to do is do a stack. So if we go into File, Scripts, Load Files into Stacks. Now I kind of pre-aligned it, so I cheated a little bit. So we're not going to try to align it here. We're just going to grab the 6 exposures. Let's see. Let's get these 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got them. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't have to align them. We're just going to click OK, and it's going to make a stack. This thing is a little pokey, so let's just be patient. Come on, guys. Here we go. Come on. Make my stack. Two, 3, 4, 5.
What's with the flamingo in the background?
That's just the splash screen for Photoshop.
Not my Photoshop CS6.
Yeah, that's not CS6. This is the latest. Sorry, this thing is a little bit pokey, but so basically we're going to have 6, and then we're going to put them together in what's known as a smart object. He says it's going to be in a smart object. Well, it's still loading up those 6. There we go. So now we see that the lowest exposure is on top. And how do we put these together in some reasonable way? So I'm going to highlight all of them. And under the layer menu, smart object, convert to smart object. So now we have a smart object. So once again, a smart object is just a container. It's a container where you can do lots of operations in Photoshop and turn those operations off and on or adjust them without going back and doing it all over again. So the next question, how do we put all these things together and get the best starting image out of it? And there is, let's see, we're going to put these together, layer. Sorry, this thing is a little pokey. Smart objects. And we're going to stack these according to a mean value. Not mean as it's being meaned. So now we have an image. And you see we are already getting some detail out of this. We haven't really got the red prominences. That would be a later step. We're not going to do that tonight. But we're getting some detail out of this. So just for grins, this is our smart object. Oh, I messed up that, didn't I? Let's try that again. So there's our smart object. Now, I don't have to make a copy of this for an actual processing, but I'm just going to make a copy to show the differences. So now we have our smart object. Don't worry about the edges over here. We can crop those out at the end if we're interested in. But now we're going to try to bring out some of the detail in this. And we have filters called camera raw filters. These are really powerful things. Can everyone see these are camera raw filters?
Yes, we got
Yeah.
it.
You got it? So I'm going to bring out a couple things. I'm going to increase the texture. Oh, look at that. We're going to crank that up. And we're going to get clarity and texture. Now, I might want to muck around with contrast a little bit. I'm not sure. Let's see how that looks. So you can play with these filters in order to get more detail and then turn them off if they don't suit you or go back. I think we're good there. So there are camera raw filters. We're going to turn those on. And that's the difference. And we can turn those off. We could go back and adjust them by clicking on it again. So let's make another copy of this. Boy, this thing is pokey. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to rasterize this. Oh, one thing I forgot. Let's do one other thing. Let's open up one of these other images. Come on, pokey, pokey. I'm going to guess it's this one. Yes. And the reason I'm going to do this is that you see with this process that the sun is getting a little gray. We don't want any of that gray. So I'm going to do a big cheat here. I'm going to mark all of this, Command A, copy it, and put it right over the top of this. And now I'm going to use my selection tool, select a nice defined sun, modify, let's select the inverse and delete it. Again, that's a bit of a cheat, but so what? So we had some high thin clouds, and so the result was, when you start processing, you get a little bit of that gray on the sun, and the more you stretch out the image, the more this comes into play. I think when Molly was doing it, it had some similar things going on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a stamp. A stamp is the sum of all the visible. So now we're looking at this result here, not worrying about what's happening underneath. So let me just make one more copy of this. I normally wouldn't do this in my processing, but for the purpose of demonstration, I think it's worthwhile. I should really paint this black, but let's not do that. So now I'm going to make a selection and just do a define stretch. I'm going to select, holding down the shift key. I'm going to move that selection so it'll show me just when it's centered on the sun. There you go, dead center. Now I'm going to select the inverse. I'll select the inverse selection. I'm going to modify this by doing a nice feather. 400 pixels. And now I'm going to hide those marching ants so we can see what we're doing. Now we still have the outside selected, and I just want to bring those up. And the easiest way to do that is just to go into the levels command and just move this in a little bit. Just gently move this in. And just for the purpose of demonstration, let's see, I'm going to do another stamp. Normally wouldn't do this. And do the same thing. Select, nope, don't do that. Let's deselect. No, I don't think I selected a circle. We need a circle. Move it right over the center, and my little crosshairs will come up. There you go. Select the inverse. Feather the selection. Let's do it by 400. Hide those marching ants. And stretch it out just a little bit more. Let's try to stretch it so we get it all the way to the edge. Now this isn't our final image, but it is pretty close to the final image. The other thing I probably would do is I'd go smooth this out. I might put it into Pix Insight to bring out a little bit more of the detail, but that's simple processing using smart objects. Are there any questions? Am I still online?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
you have to understand, Eric, that
I know you got to reach for the microphone. Yes.
uh,
That's what I say all the time.
we tell all the presenters every Sunday.
Yeah.
Chandra Sekar wants to know how you, well, he says, I believe you use PIP to align or Winju posts, correct? How did you align
No.
your suns?
They were all pretty much aligned because the pictures were taken in such a short period of time. There really wasn't much drift. So basically, you just bring them in there. You just line them up in a stack and just simple movements, bring it all into line. And then I cropped it to be a square image, figuring that, that square is probably the best looking image. And
And
then I saved it as once I did the crop, you saved it as individual images, bring it back into another stack, and then do the processing.
okay, what can tell us again your acquisition equipment you used, and particularly about the guider?
I used 540 millimeter scope, and I use Eclipse Orchestrator. And Tim and I both invested in this other guider, which we clipped right onto the telescope, which in the end, as the sun got smaller and smaller and into a crescent, it tried to guide on the crescent rather than on the full disk. So it got a little bit off center. So live and learn. So now if anyone wants to buy a solar guider, I have it. But I'm probably going to use it on a full disk. We're making a new telescope to do some hydrogen alpha on the sun.
Okay, thanks. Terry again says nice work, and okay, then I think we've got all the questions in here.
Hey, Alex.
Yes.
I did use the guider on my images, and Alex is right. It did wander because it was guiding off the crescent, so the crescent came into the center. But then I just used the transform tool in Photoshop to to bring those discs back into line. So it really wasn't a problem. I did do it that way on my images.
Okay, so in both cases, you needed to do some alignment, some registration.
Yeah, but that was really that was the easiest part. It's really only 4 minutes. There's not much drift no matter what you do in 4 minutes if you have any kind of polar alignment. So it was a matter of a few pixels here and there to do the alignment.
Correct.
Okay. Well,
and to add a couple more things, I think the thing that we didn't get out of this was earth shine. So the high thin clouds, enough of the light was reflected up there that it just kind of obscured. And I've seen a lot of people that did the eclipse imaging, and not a lot of them got earth shine. The people went to the cloudiest place in North America, got the best conditions.
You're probably just like the Canada and Maine people that had actual clear skies.
Yeah. We had about B+ skies, but it was still, we were making fun of Tim though all the time that we were there.
I actually
who wouldn't come and join us in Ohio had to go to Texas.
I had some good visual, but I just didn't. With the clouds, it wasn't good, but it still looked awfully good, the whole time. So
I made an observation, and I'm not the only one. I went to the 2017 eclipse, and my memory of it, as poor as it might be, was that the corona popped a lot more on that eclipse than it did on this one. Now, I'm not sure why that would be. Maybe it was the high clouds, or maybe it was my perception, but I've heard a number of people say the same thing.
Maybe it was that flash on your camera you were holding over your head.
I'm not playing that again.
Yeah, I'm not sure I remember it clearly enough. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, one way or another, we got the money shot, and it's probably worthwhile saying that Tim, Molly, and I all agreed in advance that whoever got the data, we would share it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're sharing, I used some of your data in that demo, and I sent a bunch of my data to Tim. I don't know. So we got C1 to C2 and C2 to C3. No,
yeah,
C3 to C4, whatever.
I haven't shared my partial phase data yet. If you guys are interested in that, I'm still processing it to make my own images, but I can share that with y'all as well. Not you guys, just them.
Who was the you guys and who was the them in that Molly?
Well, it was the three of us, and then Kevin was going to share it, but he had issues.
Okay. With the eclipse, I assume.
Yeah.
No,
he may have other issues, but yes, he had issues with the software, I think Tim said, didn't he?
Kevin Moorfield?
Okay.
don't know.
I think we've got everything from the chat group, and we've had a good audience for it tonight. I hope you guys got something out of it, and I hope you enjoy it all. Next week we've got 3 of us doing a show, and Molly's going to share some quick tips about processing. Patrick's going to tell us how to set up the CUDA accelerator, and Alex that's me, is going to tell us about some guiding, some very basic ideas about guiding. If you've never guided, you might want to get into that. Although looking at the names here, I think you've been here before. Then May 26th, Robert Reeves is coming, and Tim's going to talk about noise and some technical issues about why what it is, where it comes from, what we have to do with it, and all that other stuff, how we eliminate it as well as we can. We've got an anniversary show coming up. We've been at this for 10 years, and we'll have some more shorts during that. And then after that, we've got some blanks in the schedule. And I sure hope that you guys would come out and volunteer. You're all good at this. As you can see, we like to process stuff and show you how we processed it, like today's examples and things like that. If you've got some good techniques you can share, go ahead. Just write to us at the Astro Imaging channel, email us, and we'll talk to you a little bit. We'll figure out if we can put you on the show. It's really easy to do. You just sit there and talk and goof around a little bit, as you could see tonight. And anyway, folks, that's it for this week. We'll see you again next week. Thank you. Who's working tonight? Tim's in charge, right?
I got you.
Tim's in charge.
Good night.
Tim's in charge.
Good
Okay,
night.
take us out.